When you first met Aragorn in the Fellowship of the Ring, who did you really see? For a lot of us, the first impression is this strange, weather-beaten man lurking in the corner of the prancing pony. Frodo sees him as a guy with high boots of supple leather that fitted him well but had seen much wear and were now caked with mud. The locals just call him Strider, and honestly, it's not much of a compliment. But who is this guy really? Why is he sitting in this random inn on this specific night watching a group of hobbits? To the folks in Bree, he's just another weirdo from the wilderness, a ranger that you probably shouldn't trust. But that couldn't be further from the truth. The story of the man they call Strider is a journey that spans 87 years, and to understand the king he's destined to become, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. So in today's video, I'm going to unpack Aragorn's entire history, from even before his birth all the way up until he runs into a group of hobbits in an unsuspecting pub in the town of Bree. My name is Gibby and welcome to Factor Fantasy, a channel where we talk about all things Tolkien, analyzing lore and more each and every week. Thank you to Jason, Joshua, Timothy, RoboSteve, and the rest of my incredible members who help make videos like this possible every month. And as always, if you like the video, feel free to like, subscribe, and share with a friend, as that greatly helps support my small Lord of the Rings channel. Now with that being said, let's dive into Aragorn's intriguing past so we can better understand his role in the Lord of the Rings. Strider. It's more than just a name the Breelanders came up with, it's a perfect symbol of his life in exile. It highlights the massive gap between how he looks, like a homeless wanderer, and who he actually is, the last heir to a line of ancient kings. The people of Bree see a guy with long legs who walks a lot, so they call him Strider. Pretty simple. But they have no idea that this man and his people, the Dunedain, are the only reason they can sleep safely at night, as they guard the quiet lands from the horrors of the wild. This massive difference between what people see and what is real is the core of Aragorn's entire life before he finally steps out of the shadows. To get Aragorn, you first have to get the long, sad story of his ancestors. Aragorn's story starts at the tail end of a legendary bloodline, the last echo of the glory of Numenor. In the Second Age, after the first Dark Lord, Morgoth, was defeated, the Valar, the godlike guardians of the world, gifted the men who had fought alongside the elves a massive island of their own, set in the sea between Middle-earth and the Undying Lands. This was Numenor, the land of the gift. These men, the Dunedain, became greater than any others, with lifespans 3 times that of normal men, and they grew in wisdom and power. But there was one rule, the ban of the Valar. They were forbidden from sailing so far west that they could no longer see their own shores, a command designed to keep them from seeking the immortality of the Undying Lands. For centuries, they obeyed, becoming great mariners who explored all the coasts of Middle-earth. But as their power grew, so did their pride and their fear of death. They began to resent the ban, seeing it not as a protection, but as a cage. This is where Sauron comes in. After being defeated in a war against the Númenóreans, he allowed himself to be taken to Numenor as a prisoner. But this was a trick. Over years, he used his cunning to poison the mind of the king, Ar-Pharazôn, turning the Númenóreans' fear of death into a lust for eternal life at any cost. He convinced the king that the Valar were liars and that true immortality could be seized by force. At the height of his pride and folly, Ar-Pharazôn assembled the greatest fleet the world had ever seen and broke the ban, sailing west to make war on the gods themselves. The result was catastrophic. The Valar called upon the one true god, Eru Ilúvatar, who reshaped the world. A great chasm opened in the sea, and the entire island of Numenor, with all its glory and its massive fleet, was swallowed by the waves, vanishing forever. Only a faithful few, led by a man named Elendil, who had refused to join the rebellion, escaped the destruction in 9 ships and were thrown by the storm onto the shores of Middle-earth. These survivors founded the twin kingdoms of the Dunedain in exile. Arnor in the north, ruled by Elendil himself as High King, and Gondor in the south, ruled jointly by his sons, Isildur and Anarion. But Sauron had also survived, and the war against him was renewed. In the final battle of the last alliance of elves and men, both Elendil and Anarion were killed. Isildur, Elendil's heir, cut the One Ring from Sauron's hand, but in a moment of weakness, failed to destroy it. Just 2 years later, Isildur was ambushed and killed, and the ring was lost in the river Anduin. With the High King gone, the two kingdoms drifted apart. Gondor survived, but the northern kingdom of Arnor, not so much. After its 10th king died, his 3 sons fought over the throne and shattered the kingdom into 3 smaller, weaker ones: Arthedain, Cardolan, and Rudar. This division made them easy targets for a new evil that rose in the north, the Witch King of Angmar. Over hundreds of years of brutal warfare, the Witch King picked them off one by one until the last northern kingdom fell in the year 1974 of the Third Age. But the line of the kings wasn't completely wiped out. The heirs of Isildur became the chieftains of the Dunedain, a scattered people who wandered the lands of their old kingdom, their history almost totally forgotten by the rest of the world. For 1,000 years they held on, but their family line was plagued by tragedy. Aragorn's own grandfather, Eredor, was captured and killed by trolls, and his father Arathorn was killed by an orc arrow while hunting with Elrond's sons. Aragorn was only 2 years old. So, in the year 2933, Aragorn's widowed mother, Gilraen, took her toddler to the only safe place she knew of, the hidden valley of Rivendell. There, the master of the valley, Elrond Half-Elven, adopted the boy as his own foster son. To keep him safe from Sauron's spies, his real name was hidden. Instead, he was called Astel, which was the Elvish word for hope. This wasn't just a random act of kindness. For centuries, it had been a tradition for the sons of the Dunedain chieftains to be raised in Rivendell. Rivendell was more than just a safe house. It was a living library of the lost Northern Kingdom. Elrond didn't just protect the heirs, he protected the symbols of their kingship, like the broken sword of Narsil and the ring of Barahir. In this hidden valley, the boy named Astel grew up alongside Elrond's own sons, Elladan and Elrohir. He learned the lore of the Elder Days, ancient languages, and the art of healing. He rode out with Elrond's sons, learning how to be a warrior and a ranger. By the time he was 20, he had already accomplished great deeds with them. Elrond wasn't just hiding a child, he was forging a king. He was shaping hope into a leader who could one day reunite the kingdoms and face the darkness. Aragorn was being made elven wise, a quality that would define his entire destiny. But when Aragorn turned 20, his life as Astel was over. Elrond called him and finally told him the truth. He was Aragorn, son of Arathorn, the 16th chieftain of the Dunedain and the direct heir of Isildur. Along with this bombshell, Elrond gave Aragorn the heirlooms of his family. First was the Ring of Barahir, an ancient ring forged in Valinor itself. It was given by the elf lord Finrod Felagund to the mortal hero Barahir in the First Age as a symbol of eternal friendship between elves and men. It had passed down through millennia from Beren and Luthien to the kings of Númenor, and finally to the chieftains of the north. It was the oldest artifact of men in Middle-earth. Second were the shards of Narsil, the actual sword of King Elendil, forged by the legendary dwarfsmith Telkar in the First Age. The sword's name meant sun and moon, for it shone with their light. It broke when Elendil died fighting Sauron, and this was the same broken sword Isildur used to cut the One Ring from Sauron's hand. These weren't just old relics, they were physical proof of Aragorn's lineage, his rights, and his duty. With his head spinning, Aragorn walked out into the gardens of Rivendell to think, and that's when he saw her. He thought he was dreaming, that the legendary elf maiden Luthien Tinuviel herself had walked straight out of a song. But it was Arwen, Elrond's daughter, who had just returned from Lothlorien. She was almost 3,000 years old, but to Aragorn she looked like a young maiden, and he fell in love with her instantly. Of course, Elrond, who sees pretty much everything, noticed their connection and was troubled. He pulled Aragorn aside and laid down a massive challenge. Arwen, he said, was not going to just marry anyone. She shall not be the bride of any man less than the king of both Gondor and Arnor. And just like that, Elrond tied Aragorn's destiny to his heart's greatest desire. The quest to reclaim the throne was no longer just about duty, it was the only way he could be with the woman he loved. This is why Tolkien himself said that their story was essential, because it gives Aragorn the ultimate motivation to become king. For the next 67 years, through all the lonely and thankless tasks, this was the prize he was fighting for. So Aragorn left Rivendell and went into the wild. He took up his role as chieftain of the Dunedain, leading his people in their secret war against the servants of Sauron. For nearly 30 years, he and his rangers protected the lands of the north. They were a grim, wandering folk, skilled trackers, and warriors who hunted the dark things that crept from the houseless hills and sunless woods. They were misunderstood and looked down on by the very people they were saving, like the hobbits and the men of Bree. As he'd later tell Boromir, "Lonely men are we, rangers of the wild. The North would have known little peace but for us, yet less thanks have we than you." But his work wasn't just in the North. In 2956, he met Gandalf the Grey, and they became lifelong friends. This friendship kicked off a new chapter in Aragorn's life. From 2957 to 2980, Aragorn went on a series of great journeys across Middle-earth. To hide his true identity, he went by the name Thorongil, which meant Eagle of the Star, for his keen sight and the silver star he wore. These weren't just random wanderings. This was Aragorn's self-imposed training for kingship. He knew just being the heir wasn't enough. One of his ancestors had already tried that and been rejected by Gondor. Aragorn was going to earn his crown. He fought alongside the armies of Rohan under King Thengel, Theoden's father. Then he went south and served the steward of Gondor, Ecthelion II. As Thorongil, he became a legendary captain, winning fame and the trust of the steward. But his success made the steward's son, a man named Denethor, extremely jealous and suspicious. As Thorongil, Aragorn gave some solid advice. He warned Ecthelion to trust Gandalf over Saruman and pointed out the growing threat from the corsairs of Umbar in the south. Ecthelion gave him command of a small fleet, and Aragorn led a daring surprise raid on the corsairs' main harbor, burning most of their ships and killing their captain in single combat. But right at the moment of his greatest victory, when all of Minas Tirith was ready to celebrate him as a hero, he vanished. He sent a farewell message and left, avoiding a conflict with Denethor that could have torn Gondor apart right before the war. He then went alone far into the east and deep into the south, exploring the hearts of men and uncovering the plots of the servants of Sauron. He was basically becoming the most experienced and knowledgeable commander in all of Middle-earth. And now you're probably starting to see why his involvement in The Lord of the Rings was no accident. In the year 2980, now 49 years old, he finally turned back towards Rivendell. On his way, he passed through the Golden Wood of Lothlorien, and there Arwen was waiting for him. Galadriel clothed him in silver and white, and he appeared not as a weary ranger, but as an elf lord. On the beautiful hill of Cairn Amroth, they pledged their love to one another. Aragorn gave her the Ring of Barahir, and Arwen, in turn, chose to give up her immortality to be with him. The next couple of decades were a time of watchful waiting. But then, in 3001, after Bilbo's big farewell party, a new mission came up. Gandalf became seriously suspicious about Bilbo's magic ring and needed to find its previous owner, the creature Gollum. And he asked Aragorn for help. What started as a simple search for information turned into a desperate 8-year-long hunt in 3009. Gandalf and Aragorn scoured the wilds, from the northern forests of Mirkwood all the way down to the fences of Mordor itself. It was a grim and seemingly impossible task. Eventually, Gandalf despaired and went to Minas Tirith to look for answers in old scrolls, but Aragorn kept going. For him, this was personal. It was a way to make up for his ancestors' greatest failure. As he put it at the Council of Elrond, since it seemed fit that Isildur's heir should labor to repair Isildur's fault, I went with Gandalf on the long and hopeless search. Isildur had failed to destroy the ring out of pride. Aragorn's quest to find Gollum was the exact opposite. A dirty, thankless job he took on out of pure duty. He was literally cleaning up his family's mess. And finally, in 3017, he did it. All alone, he tracked Gollum to the Dead Marshes, right on Mordor's doorstep. But catching him was just the beginning. Aragorn's own description of the journey back is pretty intense. He bit me, and I was not gentle. I deemed it the worst part of all my journey, the road back, watching him day and night, making him walk before me with a halter on his neck. Until he was tamed by lack of drink and food, I was glad to be rid of his company, for he stank. By doing this horrible task, Aragorn gave Gandalf the final proof he needed to identify the One Ring, which kicked off the entire quest to destroy it. In a way, by capturing Gollum, Aragorn repaired Isildur's fault and proved he was worthy to one day wield the reforged sword of the king. After dropping Gollum off with the elves in Mirkwood, Aragorn returned to the north. He was now 87 years old. Gandalf confirmed that the enemy was now looking for the ring in the Shire, so Aragorn and the Dunedain doubled their watch on its borders. For a whole year, they patrolled in secret, an unseen shield protecting the hobbits from the growing darkness. And that brings us right back to where we started, the common room of the prancing pony. The man in the corner is no longer a mystery. He is the sum of his 87-year journey. He is Estelle, the hope raised in Rivendell. He is the heir of Isildur, carrying a broken sword and the fate of a broken kingdom. He is Thorongil, the legendary captain who defeated the Corsairs and spied on the enemy in his own lands. He is the hunter who captured Gollum when no one else could. He is the chieftain of the Dunedain, the last lord of a forgotten people. He has become, as the histories say, the most hardy of living men, skilled in their crafts and lore, and was yet more than they, for he was elven wise. He is Aragorn, son of Arathorn. And on that fateful day in the Prancing Pony, when Aragorn stepped out of those shadows to talk to Frodo Baggins, it wasn't by chance. It was the culmination of a lifetime of preparation. He is the king forged in the wild, ready at last to step into the light and guide the fate of the world. If you enjoyed this breakdown of Aragorn's life before the Fellowship of the Ring, leave a like and subscribe, share with a Tolkien-loving friend, and be sure to tune in next week for another Lord of the Rings video. Plus, drop a comment on what you would like me to cover next. But for now, have a great week, and I'll see you in the next video.